Welcome. I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. And just as a reminder for the webinar we're doing, that this will be recorded and you will receive a copy of this so that you can review it later or share it with others in the future. Typically, we turn those around in a day or so, so be on the lookout for that. And we just want to welcome everybody here. Today we have a special guest with us that I'll introduce in a minute with us. My name is Carl Bickmore. I'm the CEO of SnapTech IT. And I'm excited about the topic today, talking about how to use automation in your business to save time and money. And this is a pretty hot topic in my opinion. I think this is something that's going to be the future conversation for several years on the next wave of things happening in IT. So I'm excited to get into this for us today a little bit. Right off the bat, if you have used automation in your business in any way, shape, or form, or you may have even heard this weird term that's thrown around sometimes by us techno geeks called RPA automation, or robotic process automation. We're going to talk about that a little bit today, but I'm just curious if any of you feel like you know what it is or have used it before, or if you've heard of RPA automation, or you just heard of IT automation before and used it in meaningful ways. So if you have a comment, feel free to drop it in the chat or ask a question anytime during the webinar. I do have Nathan, also one of our team members, here to help and support me in running this webinar, making sure questions and comments are being paid attention to. So let's go ahead and get into the content of the webinar here. So first of all, today we have with us somebody who I've worked with actually for quite a while, Jared Brantley, who is the Chief Automation Officer of an organization called Raven Automation. And as I said before, I'm the CEO of SnapTech IT. Full disclosure, I am also a part of Raven Automation. These are two different companies and entities, but it is something that we use an automation company in SnapTech IT called Raven Automation, and I'm part of the ownership of Raven Automation as well. And back in the day, Jared and I have been working together for a while. Jared actually used to work for SnapTech IT as well. And so this is really, a presentation from SnapTech point of view, but we do have these different organizations doing these different tasks now. And so that's just an interesting point of how things have developed. Before we get too far though, because many of you are our customers, hi, good to see you. And then many of you are people who have not met us before, we like to just make sure you understand who SnapTech IT is. We are a managed IT company, and we have team members in Phoenix, Arizona, where I'm at is the location. We have several in the Atlanta area. Specifically, we're in the town of Cumming, but we serve the whole Atlantis area. And then we also have team members in San Francisco. So that's kind of spread us across the country a little bit as a managed IT provider. And we're here serving customers in those locations, but really anywhere inside of the United States. We have several customers outside of those geographies as well. So one of the questions we like to answer, and one of the ways we really think about IT at SnapTech IT is, are technology problems frustrating your employees, or is it hurting your productivity? We think one of the ways that we approach IT is to help you solve the problems and not to create additional problems. Technology can be messy, it can be frustrating, and it can really affect your employees' experience, and it can affect your ability to be productive. And so we're here to try to make happy and a productive employee through the technology enhancements. We have a proven process on how we do this. We do technology plans, we follow best practices, we do predictable IT budgeting for years in advance, helping you work securely anywhere. We're very friendly. I think that's a big difference maker for us, is that you're going to be talking to people that are our team members. They are one of our offices, and they're not just tech nerds, they're also pretty friendly people that you can develop a relationship with, know and trust and understand. So it's all about creating peace of mind and making sure you're secure. We do operate, and I'm almost done with this, by the way, but we do operate in two different ways. One is some companies hire us to be a completely outsourced IT department for them. That's our managed IT offer. We call that one Simplicity. And then we also have several customers that we work in co-managed, where you have your own IT team members, and we work as a supplement, or we boost that team, if you will. And so we do operate in both mechanisms, and it can be very beneficial relationship in either direction, whichever works best for you. So there's just a couple of things about SnapTech IT. We've been around for a minute doing this for a while, and we're really excited to be providing these educational webinars. And so let's dive into today's topics and what we're going to cover. First of all, we want to talk about what do we mean when we say IT automation. I think sometimes it gets confused with, is this AI or is this something else, and what does it mean to me? And that's what we're kind of hoping to help you understand, because if you're running a business or managing a team or thinking about technology, you should be thinking about how you're going to leverage these various things. And the AI question is one that a lot of people are thinking about right now, but a lot of people, I don't know if they understand the automation side of it, which is not exactly the same. And we'll talk about who are some of the key players in the industry out there doing this. What are the common ways that this is actually done? What types of business can benefit from it? And then we have a few real world examples that we've used at SnapTech IT for our own business or for other customers. And then we also want to talk about what this means for the strategy of your business. What does this mean for your hiring strategy? What does this mean for your productivity? What does this mean for your go-to-market on how you would approach a customer, or what you would be able to offer as a competitive advantage? And so these are all interesting things to think about. And then a last piece, I think one of the things I think is something you can understand is that if you're going to embrace automation, you'll need to build a culture of automation where you approach things with automation first. So we want to talk a little bit about what that takes. And I'll share a little bit about the journey that Jared and I have taken through when Jared was working with SnapTech, and now as we formed this new organization that's out there doing nothing but dedicated automation services, Raven Automation. Jared, why don't you just take a second to say hello for a minute as well?
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Carl. Thank you very much for having me. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, great. All right, well, let's dig on in. So automation technology, what is it? Jared, I would love if you would jump in on this and maybe talk even a little bit about where some of these weird terms come out, like RPA, the automation, or just automation, and the difference between it and AI.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, automation really isn't a concept that started in the IT space. We can really go back and kind of think production environments for some of these kinds of concepts. It goes as far back as the concept of the assembly line, right? We create a way to have repeatable processes, and having a person, or as we've evolved, having robotic equipment come in and do a particular function for some of those things. As far as the technology is concerned, gearing this more towards an IT specific approach, some of the more modern tools that many are familiar with are things like remote monitoring and management tools. With a lot of those kinds of things, we might create scripts using PowerShell or other scripting languages to get simple tasks done, like deploying software, restarting a service, scheduling a server restart, or something to that effect. As things have progressed, we're starting to see more things in the market that are classified as RPA tools, or robotic process automation. And in those kinds of environments, basically what we're seeing at this point is we're seeing tools that act as orchestrators. We set them up in between all of the different systems that a business may use, and we leverage the APIs that are part of that business and part of those applications in order to perform various tasks. So, just a few years ago, we might be limited to installing new software through a script. Well, now we can expand that far beyond just installing software. We can purchase a license from a vendor. We can assign a license to a user account. We can download and install the software on a new PC. So with the current technologies, it's now giving us the ability to take all of these smaller scale tasks and tie them back into one larger automation, now known as a process automation.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I like how you distinguish how this term RPA came from an era that was maybe even pre-IT approach or thought process. And I think sometimes it can be a little bit unfortunate to think of what we think of as IT automation today as an RPA, or robotic process automation, but it is an industry term that some know and understand. Perhaps a better way is just think automation or business process automation in general. And there's a lot of ways you can solve that. Some people are solving it by offshoring resources and having a person do that business process for you. But what can you accomplish without any people with just IT systems, right? And so like one of the practical examples I like here, because well, one, it impacted our business significantly, but I think any business could appreciate is when we did some automation for our accounts receivable process. That's a business process, not specifically an IT process, but we were able to solve it with computer systems in ways that really took a load off of our back office administrative staff that used to do a lot of manual processes. So I think one of the ways to think about automation technology today and how can you use it is thinking what are really constant, consistent, repeatable things that happen that are mundane, that just need to get done, that don't require a lot of interpretation or thinking. And RPA automation, or this type of automation that we're talking about, is ideally suited to just simply handle that. Now, a lot of Jared's use cases that he talked about were ones that we think about in IT a lot, and that's no doubt like installing software, getting licenses for software lined up, setting up users. There's a way more you can do than that, though. You can read emails, you can respond to them, you can text people, you can have interactions and interpret them. And so sometimes people think, well, that sounds like AI to me. It's not necessarily AI, because in this automation realm, what we're really talking about is you know the input, so you know the output that's required, whereas AI uses intelligence to think about things and produce content for you. This is really about like what tasks do you have in your business that are very routine, very rote, and where somebody is reading an email and saying, now I've got to go put this into some software so that it now works. Or another example is I've got the data here in my CRM, but when I get to my production software or my financial software, I got to go manually type all that stuff in again. What if there is a system that connected those two systems that don't naturally connect together and helped you do these things with automation that people are doing manually today? So paperwork or input forms, or just reading and responding to emails, looking at your accounting software, looking at your production or your ERP software and doing things and connecting them in ways that they don't naturally connect, that just saves time, make sure that things get done accurately. That's what automation technology is about today. So let's talk about some of the players that are out there in this space. Some people are playing around quite a bit. The vast majority of us in the business space are using the Microsoft Office 365 platform. And there's a lot of really interesting things Microsoft has put together that can help you automate things, to read data, to produce reporting, to do things for you. UiPath is the one that we hear about a lot in the enterprise business space, where there's tens of thousands of employees. There are companies with hundreds of employees that all they do all day is just create UiPath automations. Now, UiPath is an RPA platform, is what we call it in the IT world. But what does that mean? Is it's a software that helps you connect to all these different softwares and then run automations that does things between them. Another one on the list there is a fairly new one that's really been great for the IT space, is called Roost, and that's one that SnapTech uses heavily, and that Raven is highly expert. And Jared is, I'm just going to brag on Jared a little bit, probably one of the best in the world at that tool. And so that's been kind of a unique opportunity that we've had somebody with such talent access available to us. There are other providers out there, and some of you may have even heard of things like If This Then That, IFTT, or even more popular, a tool called Zapier, which will refer to itself as a web application programming unit or a web API. In fact, I was having a conversation with one of my friends in an entrepreneur group that I'm in the other day. He operates a realty business. And when I started telling him about what Raven Automation is doing, he's like, oh, that sounds like Zapier. Like I hired this company to come in and do all these real estate form things for me, so I don't have to do them manually anymore. They get done better, they're accurate, and they're quick. And what they did is they'd hired somebody to come in and just did a bunch of Zapier things for them. It's one of those tools out there. So some of you may be familiar with that. It's like that, but I would say at a higher level or a deeper level when you get into tools like UiPath or Roost. Jared, did you have any comments about any of these players and their advantages and disadvantages?
Yeah, I mean, this is only a small section of the players in this space. I mean, there are numerous tools that are out there, and of course, different tools have their own strengths and weaknesses. If you're an IT company, for example, while you could build a lot of great things with Microsoft Power Platform, there are some drawbacks with that, especially if you're managing multiple networks, because you have to build that automation multiple times and maintain it multiple times. One of the key benefits of the MSP or IT companies specific RPA tools is that it's giving us a lot of power to help our partners and help our customers because there is a lot of overlap in different industries with, there's only so many accounting tools that are out there. There's only so many, HR platforms that are out there. So by having tools that allow us to take a multi-tenancy approach, we can build one process, and then in that term, we can deliver that process to all of those businesses that need it. And of course, make any kind of tweaks or customizations required for their environments to run. So it definitely helps shorten the development cycle, and it also makes maintenance far easier to keep these things working.
Yeah, it's been a really exciting time for us here at SnapTech. I mean, I think from my perspective here, I feel like I saw the vision of what was going to become capable because as companies, we're all moving things to the cloud or we're all working on newer softwares. And all these newer tools have these ability for you to hook a tool in that can use an API interface to then do things with automation. And so there's a new world opening up here that you may not be aware of. And it's all about what software tools you choose to use on how capable it is to be able to do these things. And of course, those doing automation need to understand your business and your process to know how to automate it. We'll talk more about that later in the thing, but here in the webinar. But the point is that there's a lot of things available that weren't available even 2, 3, 4 years ago, and it's becoming more available every day. And to be perfectly frank, there's a lot of us that are struggling to staff things, or a lot of us are struggling to have employees excited about doing rote, mundane, routine work, to be perfectly frank. And so when you can automate these things, you might find there's some really big advantages to both the profitability of your company, but also your ability to scale and to have a happier workforce. And so that's definitely the path for here. So, I think it was probably 3.5 years ago now, I went to Jared, who at the time was managing our network operations center, security operations center department at SnapTech IT. And I said, Jared, I think this automation thing is going to be a thing. And I see some new tools coming into play. I'd really like you to dedicate your time to us. And this was no minor request. Jared is a many-year professional, and dedicating him to that was a significant thing. But I knew that this was strategically going to make sense for our IT company. And I think that for any business out there, you could have a similar moment where you say, okay, this is the part where I embrace this type of strategy and I start figuring out the players that work in my industry or the people that know. And I would say, just from the perspective of interacting with SnapTech, if you're a customer of ours, you're seeing the benefits of this, and that there are things that are getting done that we're still overseeing, we're still managing it, but we're getting things done faster and quicker because some of these things are now fully automated or partially automated. And that just means we're more accurate and better at it. And so I think you can each think about how that works in your business and what are the options available and what are the things that could be automated. And it's a very exciting time for me to think about this because we've essentially got several years into this now. And we got so much traction in this that we started having a lot of our IT competitors come to us, say, hey, how can you help us with this? And that's when we formed Raven Automation and began essentially selling IT automation services to other IT companies as well. So whether you work with us directly as your IT company or you work with one of Raven Automation's customers, you might still be benefiting from automation that Jared and his team have been putting together, because in a short time we began doing Raven Automation, we've been picking up customers every week. It's just, there seems to be a big pent up demand for this. And so it's just an exciting area of technology, and I see it only as exploding, or very much like how the cloud exploded a few years back, and everybody started saying, you know what, I should stop buying servers every time for everything. Maybe it is time that I figure out how to do this, deliver from a cloud-based solution. So anyway, that's just some thoughts about that give us kind of like what are some of the key players. Maybe you've heard of some of these, maybe you haven't, but it's probably worth the time to start thinking about how it would apply. So now let's talk a little bit about why automation is needed but not widely adopted. Jared, I'd love for you to chime in on some of this, what you're seeing out there.
Yeah, one of the challenges that many businesses are facing with these kinds of things, both businesses and just IT companies in general, it's finding the right talent to build some of these things and have an understanding of what can and can't be done. Um, Oftentimes it's you have limited resources. Where do I need to have that person spend their time? What's going to generate the most return and most value for what it is that we need? But the big thing that's really driving the need for automation is if you truly want to scale and grow your business, we need solutions that aren't always going to be throwing more people at the problem. We need to take the staffs that we have, the staff members that we have, and dedicate them to building out the processes that we need, and then funneling that into, a resource or a team that can help analyze that process and find where we can build that automation. You don't necessarily have to fully automate a process to have success. Even automating something that you do 6 times a day for 10 minutes, you're saving an hour every day. And those small gains add up in a hurry.
Yeah, even if it's not an hour, even if it's 5 minutes a day, when you look at it over a period of a year, I mean, it's about knocking out those simple, easy, quick ones is definitely one of the wins that we've seen. We're definitely in the area of hundreds of little tuck-in automations that we're running at SnapTech these days that are just saving everybody moments of their day all the time. One of the thing I think is a key element too here is that, it depends on where your business is at on your thought process, on your own way that you operate your business. How proceduralized are you? What process do you have in place? It becomes very difficult, and this is speaking to the third point there of knowing that automation is possible, but no idea where to start. It is difficult to automate a process that is not documented, written down, or fully understood, because you begin doing things, but you then say, oh, but what about this step? And how did I think about this? Or I forgot. And so it becomes very difficult to automate a process that doesn't actually exist or is very informal. And so one of the challenges that can be in this is, do you really have a conceptual way to define what a process is? In a couple screenshots here, I'm going to show you an example of just a way to think about a process in a business, in a process flow. And if you can write it like that, you probably can then approach it from an automation standpoint and talk to a vendor about ways or problems that you can solve, and explain like this step here, I think I could do that without a person. Maybe I can do that with automation, as an example. So it's a big key piece though, is that if you're not very process driven now, it can be more difficult to automate it. You might need to work on just getting the thought process and organized on your processes to begin with, or at least the ones that you would want to automate. Jared, did you have any comment about that particular piece there?
No, I mean, I think you've pretty much covered it very, very well. I guess the only other thing that I'll add is even if you're an organization that is heavily process driven and you have lots and lots of process documentation, unfortunately, our companies are all staffed with people and they make mistakes and they don't always execute those processes exactly as they're written. So that's one of the great benefits of automation is that you can ensure great consistent results and ensure that that process is followed exactly as it was designed.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point. Well, let's look at some examples here. This is the one I kind of alluded to earlier. I a long time think about this one. This is an automation we did in SnapTech IT as a business, but I think this is a very universally understandable problem that any business has, that has a process where you do work and you build a customer for it, and then you wait for the customer to process that invoice and then send the payment however they send it, to electronically or check or whatever that may be. And you can sometimes find yourself having issues where invoices aren't getting paid on time, and that can be very impactful to your businesses. The cash flow problem can very much happen, and it can be just because you have a lot of slow players, or sometimes your accounts receivable problem just happens because you're growing and you just have a bigger accounts receivable. It's a lot more work to produce the invoices, to receive the payments, to categorize them, and so forth, so on. And so we found in SnapTech IT, we would email out invoices to our customers, and then there are those that would do this well and quickly, and then there would be either just a mistakes made or for whatever reason something didn't get taken care of, And we started finding that as our business grew, that just the amount of management took a lot of time and effort from a person, where they had to go and look and see, okay, what payments have come in, who's got how much past due. We started producing good reporting about it. Say, okay, how many days past due is this particular one? And then they would send an email out, but we didn't have it really well processed here. And so that email might say one thing one time and say something else a different time. And then a lot of times that request would come back with like, oh, I need to get a copy of that invoice. I didn't notice it, sorry. Or, hey, can I get a statement so I can see how things have been applied, and so forth, so on. And so we took a hard look at that and we said, maybe there is a better way. And so we took a look at our accounts receivable process and said, well, look, we have a tool here that can look at our accounting software and know the status of every invoice. It can also look over here where we have everybody's name and email. We know who the billing contact is, and it can fire off emails and do things for us. And so what we did is we said, okay, well, once something is 15 days past due, send a gentle reminder. Once it's 30 days past due, send another reminder, maybe a little bit more focused, and also include the invoice in the statement automatically. So we just know they're probably going to ask for it anyway, so just do it. And then at 45 days past due, there's a different message, and it kind of just progresses as it goes. So now the messaging became consistent, and it was happening exactly on time, never with delay or busyness in some other part of the business didn't stop us from doing that. And it didn't take a person's effort, and it really changed a person's job in our organization who was spending all sorts of time on that. And the result was an incredible reduction in our past due amounts. Like, we're talking incredible. Like for us at the time when we first implemented, I think our things that were, I think 30 or 60 days past due was in a couple $100,000 on an average, week to week or month to month. And now it floats in the $3,000 or $4,000 range. I mean, it's just significantly different. And which goes to show, like, clearly our customers, didn't want to delay, or it was just, mistakes, or just, just not getting it too busy. And that process, made it way easier for everybody. And it took a load off of people's work to just, oh, here's the statement and invoice automatically delivered. Oh, I understand where we're at. I know how many days we're at. Nobody had to sit there and think about it. It just happened automatically, right? And so I just think anybody could benefit from, taking a business process that's not running well or not consistent, or taking mundane work or people don't love doing, and automating it. It's just a great use case. So just an example of what that flow looked like for us. This is an example of how you could write down a process, say, okay, what's the first thing we do? Okay, look at your unpaid invoices, check payment status. Is it paid, updated? If it's unpaid, let's get the billing contact details. Is it our first attempt to collect? Yes. Then generate the first email. No. Okay, generate this, let's call it stronger email language. So forth, so on, as it looped through and continued through that process. And so by automating that and reading and having connection into our accounting tools and into the contact information, we are able to automate that process. Jared, any comments about this particular process, or just in general?
Yeah, I mean, the great part about something like this, first of all, is you can build in some error checking, because no one wants the embarrassment of reaching out to a customer to find out, well, hey, I paid that invoice, you just haven't credited this to the account. So
Yeah.
you can add that safety check at the very beginning to make sure that you're actually taking action in the right way. And then when you get into the point of actually generating those messages, you can do a little bit of research and determine what language really gets the response that we need. What's the best way to deliver this? And that's where tools like AI are really useful, because you can take that and feed it into things like Microsoft Copilot and have it make suggestions back on how to improve the language to get the actual result that you want. So once you've established all of those things, that's the hard part. The easy part is just putting the automation in place to let it run. And then you no longer have a person having to do that process.
It's a really great point. And, I think one thing that you tipped on there that might be worth taking just a minute to talk about too is, like, you talked about, hey, how can we improve language through AI and whatnot? And this is where I think the convergence of these conversations are. It's like, what's AI? What's automation? Automation is doing these tasks where, like, I'm going to look at invoices and I'm going to see the date and it's there. You don't need AI to interpret that. You know the condition, and so you know what to do, the steps to be taken. Now let's just figure out how to automate it, right? AI can help with things like language generation or email content, or it can help you with interpreting reporting, for instance. But the two are not the same, but that doesn't mean that they don't converge and they can't use AI in an automation process, right? And so those are just important things to understand. AI is more like a piece of an automation or a piece of creating an automation, but AI is not in and of itself, the way it's built today, an automation tool. That's, I think, a key understanding. Automation tools run scripts that take input and then produce output. AI is more interpretive or helping you create or help you with language. Maybe one day AI will be the automation tool as well, but it's not really built like that currently. Their
Right.
language, you know, and I just think that's a big piece to interpret. because it's like people are like, oh, I want to get AI doing all this stuff. The reality of it is the practical approach is getting something like an RPA tool or just IT automation in general doing is what you really want. But you might use AI to help you make it more efficient or better worded, so forth, so on. And so using them together is not bad, but the automation is how you actually get stuff done. Is that a fair way of saying it, Jared?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When it comes down to it, both systems, building automated workflows like we have mapped out here and leveraging AI, both require certain formatted inputs. In the AI world, we refer to those as prompts. While there are some AI systems that are out there that can kind of make decisions and take actions based on what the systems are seeing, the systems that we are using, in our worlds like ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, et cetera, they require prompts from us on what to do. They're nothing more than tools that we can incorporate into much larger scale processes.
Right. Well, I hope that makes it clear or helps people understand the difference a little bit. Hopefully this is all making sense. Feel free to ask any questions if there are any. Uh, let's go on to another use case. Once again, we tried to pick use cases that are universal, that any business could appreciate the downsides of it. So this one's a somewhat technology centric, something we think about in the IT world, but nonetheless, a problem I think we can all relate to is just like, we need to get an employee onboarded and we need to get all these things done for them. And so that's very commonly somebody in your team or an HR team or an office manager takes on the task of collecting all the needed things. Perhaps they have a process written and there's a checklist or something like that. But the reality is a lot of the steps can be taken with automation. And what happens is when it's a manual process, you'll find that, well, at least we can all relate to, I have an employee coming in to work or a new coworker coming in, and it's a real bummer when they come in and things aren't ready for them on the first day. It gives a poor impression to the new employee. They're like, oh, they don't have their stuff together. Um, Whereas the other version could be, oh man, everything's ready. It's the first time I ever started a job and I didn't have to wait on things to get finished up, as an example for my onboarding. And these are things like, yeah, getting their computer set up and the software installed, but also making sure you're remembering all the various other steps, their email signature, any documents that they need to sign, setting up folders and access, getting any training done that they need to do, making sure that they're ready to go with their email tools, so forth, so on. So those checklists can be fairly lengthy, but when it comes at least to the technology side, a lot of that can be automated. And so that's another use case where we've done a lot of work on this in SnapTech IT for our own employees, but also for our customers. And so here's a little bit of a workflow on some automation of creating email accounts and licensing and whatnot. Jared, maybe you could talk a little bit about the work you've done here in helping us with this.
Oh yeah. Without a doubt, on the Raven side, anytime we enter any new engagement, this process is almost always the first thing someone asks us to set up for them. So, when we talk about the onboarding process for a new employee, as you mentioned, it can be extremely frustrating because undoubtedly there is some step that gets missed along the way because there's a lot of moving parts anytime we bring a new person onto the team. So, by leveraging automated workflows, we can go, we get a request submitted through some means. Most of the time, that's a form or, an email or something to that effect. And then we can immediately create a user account for that person. And then we can go over to Microsoft 365 and set up their mailbox. You know, if we don't have a license available, we can acquire that at the same time and assign that license.
Yeah, all with
Do we need a
automation.
new computer?
Yeah.
If we need a new computer, if you're working with an MSP, we can then send them a quote for a quote request for that new hardware. Otherwise, we can pre-stage whatever hardware you have on hand. We can create accounts for the different line of business applications that you might have. That's a common miss for many MSPs working with, other businesses. You might create that user account in, Active Directory or, Microsoft 365. But when it comes to the actual applications that are used day to day by, that business's employees, that's a big miss because MSPs don't always have the access to create those. But in many cases, we can automate that process. So now you as a business owner don't necessarily have someone in your office spending their time creating those accounts for Salesforce or for QuickBooks or for NetSuite or whatever platform that you're using. Uh, After that, we can go ahead and take that new employee's details and add them into an HR platform. From there, we can make sure they have access to any network resources that they might need. We can join them to SharePoint groups or Microsoft Teams channels or Slack or whatever the tool is. We can ensure that your security policies are applied to protect your network. That's another big miss pretty often in a new employee process. And then most importantly, we can make sure that those credentials for that person are documented somewhere so that they're available on that employee's first day of work and ensure that all of those items are set to require a password reset.
Right. Yeah. So these are a lot of detail there. You mean sometimes my head spins a little bit when I start thinking about some of the stuff. I think the key message I'm hoping people are getting out of this a little bit is you're thinking, okay, what am I doing manually, or what do I have a person doing, or what is my IT company doing manually that maybe could be done more efficiently or more easier if it was automated, or if it was more automated for the pieces of it. And so these are just good questions to think about. How's that work in your business, and what are your options? Certainly at SnapTech IT, how we treat ourselves and our customers is we really work hard to take an automation approach where it makes sense. And at the same token, never losing the connection with the personal connection, but just leveraging the tool to help us be better at what we do, if that makes sense. So that's
Well,
just another. Go ahead, Jared.
Carl, there's a good reason that we have kind of a Visio-based flow chart here than the actual automated process, because even for some of the SnapTech customers that are out there, some of those organizations have as many as 90 different steps that happen in their new employee onboarding process.
Yes, some are far more complicated than others. There's no doubt, and there's a lot of applications to deal with, a lot of departments, a lot of steps. Yes, that can be anyway. Yeah. Let's look at another use case here as we're cruising through here. This is another one that's, I was very happy the day that Jared solved this for us in ConnectWise, and it's really just about the problem that a lot of businesses run into. So many of us, we either have a server system in our network that has a few different applications we're delivering, but what really is happening to a lot of us is we have a CRM that's hosted on this cloud system over here, and then we have another tool we use for managing our scheduling, our service teams, or an accounting package that's doing things, and it might be hosted over here in this cloud thing. And none of those things really talk to each other. So this use case specifically was one that we were struggling with in SnapTech IT, where we have our main tool. We call it a professional service automation, or PSA tool. You might think of it like what some people call an ERP tool, or just think of it as a business management tool where our people know where our customers are, they know what jobs need to be done, and it's in this one piece of software. Ours happens to be called ConnectWise Manage, that we use, that these service tickets interact with and whatnot. But we have this way of collectively looking at it. And every now and then as a company, we need to send out a message to our customers, or at least our point of contacts with customers. It could be a security alert that's coming through, or something that they need to be aware of in general. And so we need a quick, reliable, accurate way of doing it. And what we were doing before was we'd go to our manage tool, and we would pull up this list of all the customers, and it would export out like a spreadsheet. And then we'd go through the process of putting that into email and typing out the email and getting it out the door. That was fairly time consuming. and it was a lot of steps to get an accurate and current list. And so what we found is sometimes people are like, well, I'll just send it to the same list I sent it to last time, but maybe 2 new customers have come on and they're not going to get the message because we didn't add them to that email list. And so we had this real problem, but at the same token, we had also adopted using a CRM tool in our sales process that has a really great email platform that's very reliably sends emails and connects. They look nicer too, they're easier to read on the eyes. But those two systems didn't talk to each other directly. And so what did we do? Well, I went to Jared and said, hey, look, can our tools read what's in our CRM, which we happen to be using a tool called HubSpot, but there are many CRMs you could do this with. And can it look at our production systems over here where we have our point of contact information, whoever it currently is identified and documented there, and can it create a list in our CRM so we can send an email to our clients really quickly and reliably without having to make sure that list is accurate and up to date. And so with an RPA tool, he created a system that checks in on the one place, the management tool, and synchronizes it to a list in our CRM. I think that's a daily process that you run, if I remember correctly, Jared.
There's some multiple parts to that. Part of it's weekly, part of it's daily.
Yeah, well, but the key thing is now as the CEO of SnapTech, if I need to get a message out to our customers that's important, or if there's some other thing we need to get out, all I need to do is just open up our CRM and the list is there and it's accurate, and we just need to write the email. And maybe we'll use AI to help us write the email, but either way, it's a very simple, very quick process where we can reliably send it because it read information in another system and put it into this one. And that just saved all sorts of manual steps. And so I just, I hope these use cases, there's so many that we could talk about. And once again, we try to focus on things that I think are very practical to kind of give you ideas of what you could automate or the ways you can connect systems together like I just described, and how that has benefit to your ability to get your job done either more accurately, more quickly, or even perhaps with less people involved in general. So that's a little bit about this. Here's a little bit about the workflow. As Jared alluded, there might be a few steps on how he's thinking about that. Jared, you're welcome to talk a little bit about how you accomplish that workflow here. That'd be great.
There are multiple steps involved in some of this process. So the first thing that we do from an IT company perspective is we pull all of the user accounts out of Microsoft 365 and make sure that we have those set up as contact records inside of that PSA tool that you mentioned. That's step one. We've got to have contacts somewhere. There has to be a source of truth. In this case, we use the PSA. But like many businesses that have multiple teams that work out of different tools and platforms, there are some challenges and gaps that are there. So what we were able to do is basically create a means of reaching out to the PSA tool and say, hey, give me all of the contacts for company A, okay? And then we reach out to HubSpot in this case and say, okay, now give me all of the contacts we have in HubSpot associated. And we build 2 lists there. And we basically compare the lists. Do we have this person on the PSA side set up to be a marketing contact? Yes, cool. Do they exist in HubSpot? No, let's create them. Do they exist in that HubSpot list, but they're no longer a marketing contact on the PSA side because the account manager removed them from that list? Well, we need to make that update and make that change. So when that process runs, it runs every single day. It takes for the automation about 35 to 40 minutes every day for that to run. And that's automation going through them one at a time. Imagine if we had a human having to do that every day.
Yeah.
And when we look back at any of the results, depending on the day, it runs anywhere from 1,700 to 1,900 different actions.
Yeah, it's really good to help put that into perspective. And it's like, and this is how we can ensure that when we need this in a moment's notice, we really don't have to think about it anymore. The list is accurate, it's up to date. We have the best tool to send this out, and the data is being pulled from another system, all with automation. So let's talk a little bit about the future of business operations. And what does automation mean for your business? I think this is an important strategy piece, and this is part of like the educational piece I wanted to share thinking about. This is certainly how I think about this at SnapTech IT, and I think a lot of businesses could benefit from this kind of point of view. So I think the thing is when it comes to the strategy of automation and how you approach it, the benefits you're going to get from this are that you're going to get a freedom to work on higher value or more purposeful work, and that's been more significant than I thought initially. Sometimes work can be really mundane, very boring. Some people actually, personality-wise, they don't mind that kind of work, and that's fine. But I'm finding less and less as that's the case, especially with the generations that are coming up that are just overstimulated, and they, so many feeds are running their way, and it's a lot of the cycle, how they operate just needs to be at a higher, more purposeful level. Mundane things are not well executed by a lot of people, and people don't relish that work, even if it is their job to do it. And so I guess one of the things, the principles I'm trying to say is like recognizing that it'll be a happier employee if you can have them doing higher value work, a work that really requires human interaction. This is not about saying we don't need humans to do our business anymore. It's about recognizing that there's work that can be done that doesn't require human intelligence or human intuition, and let's get that off the table so they can work on that stuff that does. Also, it's about aligning the caliber of work with the talent. To me, there's nothing more frustrating than taking like one of my highest paid people and asking them to do entry level work that's very routine. It's just not a good use of our spend on that resource. So just if they're spending time doing that, then they're not doing the caliber of work that they're capable of. And how does this affect your culture is, I think, a really important thing to think about. And this also has a positive impact on your hiring strategy too. I've never taken the approach that I'm going to automate jobs and let people go, but it might mean that I hire less in the future, or I can scale and do more with less people. But the work that they're doing is probably going to be more satisfying, more purposeful driven work. And so like for me, I never be like, I'm going to automate that job. But I have thought, well, maybe I don't need to hire as many of this if this automation works correctly. I think it's a more appropriate point of view. Any comments on that from you, Jared, on how you've seen this play out with our customers,
Yeah,
automation or a
you know,
SnapTech?
the important part to remember here, especially when it comes to, staffing levels, is you're exactly right. You're not automating to reduce your headcount today. You really still need those same individuals to be out there developing those processes that we need to automate. Someone has to figure out the steps that need to be taken so that way we have a framework to build off of. The other part of this is while automation can certainly help you improve gross margins and all of those fun things, the reality is automation absolutely, as you kind of touched on, can help reduce burnout. And we all know that it's quite costly to hire and train an employee. And if there's something that we can do to help extend that employee retention, those are absolutely things that we should be looking at. And automation is a fantastic tool for doing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, so a couple other things that we thought about this is like, look, when you have a very easily repeated process that a computer can do, then you're taking human error out of the conversation, and you can make things more secure. And a lot of us have a lot of concerns around cybersecurity in IT systems today, and believe it or not, a system executing it will be more consistent and reliable than a human. And so that's another place that can really affect your business strategy. Is like you can rely on less human error. Or I'm sick today, so I can't get this kind of thing done, right? Another really interesting point is when you have an automation running, there's nothing to say that automation couldn't run 24/7 as well. And so what does this mean to your business on your ability to respond or affect or improve customer experience, or to have new business models where you can service at least things you've automated 24/7 rather than the standard business hours? So that's just an interesting point of how that could affect the strategy of your business. And I think one of the things, I think business is about people doing business with people, and it's fun to say that on an automation webinar. But I think that ultimately, people in their career, they want a few things. They want mastery of their craft. They want to have autonomy, a say in what they're doing. They want to be at the table. more so than ever before, and they want to be doing things with purpose or meaning in their life. And it's a nice that our society's in that position where we can think that way. I don't think we've always been there, and it's always been the mentality. But without that MAP, mastery, autonomy, and purpose in their life, they're going to struggle and not be happy with the job, and they'll probably be looking for other jobs. But when you have the ability to take some of these mundane things off the table, you're going to increase their skills. They're going to learn more important or interesting things. And so that's just, I think, culturally an important keynote to think about, is how this affects the employee that now works in conjunction with Automate to take the mundane and rote things off the table. So with that being said, I think one of the things that's helpful to understand, and SnapTech has certainly gone on this journey of figuring out what does it mean to have a culture of automation. I think just saying, hey, I want to automate a few things is not enough. It's all about that approach or a culture that says I'm going to be doing things with automation first, wherever possible. And so you need to have systems or a team that thinks, hey, that's a repeatable task. I need to identify it. I need to seek input. I need to evaluate the financial shortcomings, confirm, create, repeatable, evaluate the ROI, and then consult with an automation expert. You know, sometimes you can get great ideas by somebody helping you improve that automation. Jared, I would love for you to talk about the ROI piece of automating. It's like, how do you fund this? How does it make sense? I mean, SnapTech went from having nobody being paid all day to doing automation to having multiple people. And now SnapTech buys those services from Raven Automation like other IT companies do, or other companies in general. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about how you in SnapTech IT built out our ability to measure the value of automation in our business.
Yeah, it really started with baby steps, right? And just figuring out how do we determine what that ROI really is. And the first step in that process was, okay, great, time savings. How long does it take to do this task manually? Okay, cool. We know it takes, X number of minutes or, X number of hours, whatever that may be. Okay, great. Now you've got a resource that has to build that. So how much of that resource's time has to go into building that task? How often does that task need to run for you to be generating some positive returns in that manner? So those were kind of some of the entry level things that we looked at, was understanding that if we really wanted to drive some profitability, my role at SnapTech suddenly came from a role that actually generated revenue to becoming a cost center, because I'm no longer actually billing any kind of agreements for my time. It's all internal use at this point. So in order for that to really make some value, we had to determine what was the standard. How many hours per week did I need to save with automation in order to make the efforts that I was putting in worthwhile? That was the basic stuff that we came up with. Now, as we continue to expand, now we start looking, okay, we have this many employees on the team. This is, the average hourly cost for all of those employees. We know their salaries. We know that when we add, benefits to that, it's going to be about a 20% increase over their salary on average.
For the
So now we
overhead.
can take that, right. So now we can take that and we can figure out that hourly cost for that employee. And we can then go back and look at the time that we're using on those manual processes again and understand, okay, great. This is what the actual cost is to do this task manually. If I can automate that task in 20 hours of work, then I'm going to potentially save this many dollars because we won't be doing the task manually anymore. But ultimately, the big thing that we had to make the determination at SnapTech was how much time is acceptable before we see positive returns on that automation. And we eventually, I don't remember if we settled on this as a group or if I just kind of picked the number, but we decided that 3 months was our reasonable time frame. If we were going to make the investment to automate a process, we wanted to be generating some positive ROI on that process within 3 months.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing, is once you start building a culture of automation, I remember we started off like, well, what are we going to automate? I was like, I don't know. New users, how do we set up, automate Office 365? That was our particular case. Any business needs to look around. And so at first we came up with like, okay, well, there's a few ideas, but as we continue to build this culture and continue to challenge the team to think this way, suddenly our list became way longer than we could ever get to, right? We could come up with all sorts of ideas of things to automate, and some were easier to get to than another. And so then we started a process of, we kept a running list in our management tool where anybody could submit automation requests, and then we'd evaluate the business importance of it, the significance. We really like to focus on things that would benefit our clients as well. And then we'd have Jared and team estimate the amount of time it'd take to create, which gave us kind of that dollar amount to target, and said, hey, how much time will it save us? And then we started really getting a tool for being able to say, okay, of all these automations we can do, what should be the ones that we're focusing on right now, and what's going to produce the ROI that makes sense. So that's just about us creating a culture of it. It involved, everybody giving an input. It involved figuring out a way to measure ROI based on people's costs of their time, and then the time savings. It's a really great way of doing it. There are other ways you could get to ROI too. I mean, you might even put automations in place that actually do generate income for you. And so there's a very clear line, not just time loss or time spent or cost of time, but actually income. But for me, it's good enough to know that I'm saving the amount of time, that Jared is making my people enough more efficient, that he's paying for his team at minimum, and the tools were involved in doing it. And then we started to really get ahead of that as well significantly. So that became a really great way for us to think about automation. And once you get into that zone of where you've got ROI regularly producing and in relatively short order, 3 months to me feels like short order. That's great. Because I would tell you at first, when we hit some very big automation tests, some of them took a lot of time to produce. And some of it was about us learning a new tool in a new industry that just isn't developed. We're very cutting edge when we started approaching this 3 years ago. But now it's become much more common, and it's only going to become more and more so known and understood. And this is why we kind of want to do a webinar about this topic, is because I think like a lot of people don't understand what it is, and they don't understand how quick this is coming and how much it can benefit your organization if you think about this and get a little ahead of your competition in doing this and what the benefits are. So, to me, that's a key element. Here at SnapTech, we're happy to talk about this topic, ask questions about what's going on in your business, and give you ideas. Maybe Raven Automation can help you, maybe not. But either way, SnapTech will definitely continue to improve our processes with automation. And we will also encourage our customers to think this way, whether they do it with Raven or we're helping or somebody else is helping. I think this is just a way to think about it that you may not be tuned into, may not understand the undertow that's happening here. But to me, this is the next big thing in technology, is accomplishing things through automation on systems that don't naturally connect or talk to each other, finding a way to connect them and take these mundane routine tasks out. So that's a little bit about what we wanted to share about that. Any other final parting thoughts from you, Jared, about the topic of automation in general for a business?
I guess the final thought that I have is, if I go back in time a couple of years and think about just getting started building some automation, I was like many people out there, having no idea where to get started or what was possible. But the reality is, once we just kind of jumped in and made something work, then all of these other ideas immediately came flooding on how can we add additional value to the business? How can we really make things worthwhile? And the reality is, when it comes to automation, is that the best automations are forgettable.
Yeah.
And there is this concept of, what have you done for me lately? As an automation resource, it's really, really important that we are constantly building and adding new things to really drive the business forward, and constantly showing that ROI piece. So that you have that constant reminder, Carl, of why you paid me for that period of time.
Yeah. Well, to me, so that might be another thing worth just saying too. I think it starts with the business leadership in having the vision or and the conviction to stay with it until you get over that corner of seeing the benefit. And then it's another piece of what we do. It's who we are. It's like it's part of our culture, And so I think but I think it does really start with the leadership saying, okay, even if things didn't work right out of the gates, let's keep working at it, because we know this is our path, if that makes sense. I remember Jared funny calls them my pep talks with him about this, like when things weren't 100% working at first on the new tools that are experimental that we were checking in on. but it's been a fun journey. It's exciting, and I'm just really looking forward to more about this. Hopefully there's a few things that you guys got out of this that are value for you, that gave you some ideas of things you hadn't thought about or didn't understand. Feel free to keep the dialogue going. Feel free to email and engage. Jared's available for conversations, can be reached in these ways on the screen. Of course, you can also reach out to myself or any other team here at SnapTech. We love having these conversations, whether you're a customer or not, or whether, you know, it's just interesting technology, and it's just good to know what people are doing. And we're happy to share what we're doing, and because we're very headlong into this automation approach. As I wrap up here, I just want to make sure you all know we have another upcoming webinar. You know, I think it might be fair to just say, hey, we're trying to pick topics that we think anybody could be interested in, whether they're a customer or not. We certainly love to have these, and one of our big purposes of doing these webinars is to educate our customers, but anybody really. And we think there's a lot of folks out there that are using Microsoft Teams, but might have this nagging suspicion that maybe there's a few things Teams can do that you're not currently doing that would benefit or make it better for you. And so we come up with our next webinar. There's a QR code on the screen here. Feel free to grab your smartphone camera and grab that link, and it will take you straight to signing up for the next webinar, which is top ways to get the most out of your Microsoft Teams that you aren't currently doing. Things that we see a lot of times people miss. Maybe you're doing some of them. Maybe fun to see what you're doing or what you're not doing or what you haven't heard about. But we're looking forward. That's going to be Thursday, August 22nd, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And we're happy to have you and invite you to get signed up for that webinar right away as well. With that, I think we're at a good spot here. We've talked a lot about automation. We really appreciate your time. We really appreciate your working with us and getting to know you. And feel free to engage, send us an email or connect with us in whatever way works for you. And we'd love to keep the dialogue going. So thank you, everybody, and we hope you have a great day.
Thank
Carl,
you.
we do have one question here that came in. So the question is, yeah, we'll wrap it up with this. If we have a specific process identified we want to automate, how would the process work to receive a quote to automate? Is the fee for automation one time or recurring? And I would add something that wasn't asked and would be part of it is also finding a partner that would be properly fitting to get this automated, based on the type of business that they have.
Great. Well, help me keep both those questions together. Those are two really solid questions. And I see that different organizations approach this differently. Particularly, first on the question is like, okay, you know what you want to automate, now how do you go about it, and what can you expect on the ways that people engage or the cost side of things? I can tell you at Raven Automation, our approach has been to ask people to think of us like an available automation department, so you don't have to have your own internal automation team that's going to just always do automations for you. But there's no ongoing charge for automations that we've created for you. And so if you're continuing to pay us to do things, we're constantly just creating more automations for you. So it's about like an approach of almost like a staff aug approach is the way that we're doing it at Raven. But if somebody wanted to hire us just for the project of doing an automation, it would be pay for our time to do it, whatever software licensing is necessary. And then once it's done, that automation is yours and you go for it. But one thing I would caution you to think about is, automations are going to rely on connecting to different software tools. Those top software tools are going to evolve and migrate from time to time. Like for instance, maybe you want to do something in Office 365 and connect it to your CRM. Great. But both of those will go through iterations and updates, and then those updates might make something in the automation not work as expected. And so one of the services that we thought would be valuable for folks too is just a management and monitoring of your automations. And then when something changes or breaks, we know it because we put monitoring hooks in there to tell us, and then we get in and figure out what changed and then get it back working again. Because that's one of the things about a lot of things in technology is like, you can get it in place, but something can be updated or changed and then it needs to be reworked slightly. And so that's another service that we offer as an engagement, just a monitoring and management to make sure that everything keeps working. Certainly something you could staff and do yourself as well. Those are ways that we've come up with approach. I do think that there are businesses out there that do sell automation, like pay X amount a month and you have this automation and it's in perpetuity. So you don't necessarily pay for their time to build it for you or anything like that, but you are going to pay for that automation as long as it continues to function. So you do find different businesses might approach this way. And look, it's a pretty new and developing field. So I would say a lot of it's still being figured out. But like I said, at Raven Automation, our approach has been more like, look, if you keep paying us on an ongoing monthly basis, it might be because you're asking us to manage or maintain and keep everything working that's been set up, or that you're asking us to constantly create new things for you, if that makes sense. We also use the approach of, hey, if we've created it elsewhere, we can also apply it to you, which makes our development and cost of developing something less. We think that community style approach, like if we've written it once, we'll keep applying it, and that makes it quicker and easier. But those are a couple of, I hope that answers the questions of ways of engagement. You could expect a lot of different ways that people might engage, and I'll just tell you ways that we're thinking about at Raven, and that I've heard others. The other question, Nathan, help me out. That was about selecting a partner. What was the second question?
Yeah, I just added on there to make sure that your business, that you're engaging with somebody who is already building automation in your vertical, because it depends on if that organization who's creating the automation has access to those software tools, is familiar with their specific APIs and use cases.
Well, okay, that's a really great point to talk about too, real quick, is that, you know, different tools are used in different industries. Like when I was talking to my buddy, Ed, maybe he's here, he can hear, you know, the other day, and he was telling me about the company he hired that came and did a bunch of Zapier things. That company was specifically expert in the specific type of real estate that he does. And so they very much knew his business processes and exactly what he was trying to accomplish and the tools involved in it, the common industry tools. And that is the tough thing about automation, is you need to find somebody that actually understands your business process and your tools that you use and how you would do things in those tools in order to accomplish that. Now, some things are fairly generic, like there's maybe 5 to 6 really common use accounting applications, and what people want to do with an accounts receivable process is fairly universal or fairly understood, and so that could be applied in mass, you know, to lots of companies. But anytime you get into automating things that are really specific to business, you need to kind of partner that understands your business or is willing to learn your business and your tools in order to do that. And that's really kind of where Raven Automation is right now. A lot of Raven Automation companies, our customers, are other IT companies. Why? Because we really know how to automate IT things, right? But as we're growing our business, we're learning about other industries, financial management, insurance industries, manufacturing industries, and those tools, and what we can do to automate them to understand the business. But it is important that whoever you're picking to help you with automation truly understands your business and the tools, and can competently help you through that, because if they don't, they will not get those automations correct. I hope that's a little bit of an expansion of what you said, Nathan, and what you're hoping to communicate to the crowd as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, it was just because you and I had discussed this before. And so, you know, that the idea is, you know, Raven is familiar with building automation for IT companies right now. It's not a one-stop shop, so that, you know, attendees, you know, if you're in a different line of work, in a different industry, you want to make sure that you're finding an automation partner who's very familiar with your industry, so that you can get that taken care of. So Carl, I think you captured that well.
Either very familiar or willing to spend the time to learn. And that's sort of where Raven Automation is at. When I talk to somebody outside our industry, I say, hey, look, maybe there are no RPA vendors or automation vendors for your industry. So somebody's got to be the one to step up and figure it out. We're pretty excited about developing in that direction as well. And we feel like we'll have a lot of other industries under our belts in pretty significant ways relatively soon. But they've got to understand that it's not any automation tool or any automation person can just jump in and solve problems for you. There is very much a back and forth of understanding your business and your industry. And if they don't, they're going to be really, really poorly capable. So thanks for bringing that up, Nathan. It is a key point. Anything else that we should cover, Nathan, that you've noticed from the comments or questions?
No, I think that's it. And we appreciate everybody attending. And one final thought, we have this QR code, get registered. Carl already mentioned it, but I'm going to mention it again because I'm wearing my marketing hat over here and want to see those numbers go up. This is going to be a real handy webinar. And Carl, you're hosting, or you're the speaker, and I'm the MC for that one. So we're going to have a good time on the Microsoft Teams focus next month.
Well, big thanks to Jared for joining us today. Thanks for sharing some of your insights from the trenches. And Nathan, thanks for all your support and help in bringing these off. And thanks to everybody that attended or that are watching the recording. We just really appreciate you and hope you're finding some value in our education. And feel free to suggest topics or interest to us. And please keep in the loop. But we're going to try to keep creating content that we hope people find interesting. Thank you, everybody.